Shalom, ladies and gentlemen. Today, as always, we'll be talking about our weekly Torah portion, Parshas Lech Lecha. And yes, this is very symbolic that we begin our yearly cycle, the cycle number 5785 from the creation of this world after the holidays from Parshas Lech Lecha. The calendar issues, the Bereshit was attached to the holidays, and then the first week there was no time, so we begin with Lech Lecha. And actually, Rabbi, he said that this is the first happy Parsha. Why? Because it's a Parsha that we start to walk together with our father Avram Avinu. Because before that it was all about fiasco. There was a fiasco of the creation, of Gan Eden, of the flood, of the Babylonian tower, and now finally it's Avram Avinu who start to walk in the ways of God. But I want to ask a question about the beginning of the weekly Torah portion. Everybody knows the words, the first words that Hashem tells the first Jew, to Avram, Lech Lecha, go to yourself, go for yourself, go by yourself, whatever you translate it. But one of the definitions of the challenges that Avraham Avinu faces with this address from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from Hashem, is that he was not given where to go. And this was a part of the challenge, that he had to go just because Hashem commanded him to go, but where to go, he was not told. But it's much deeper question, and explain why. I never thought about it before. Before that, a story, that a Hasidic story or proverb that I probably already mentioned before. It's a story about Rabbi Levitzka from Berdichev, who one morning was walking probably in Berdichev, and one of his congregants, he just bumped into the Rebbe. Rebbe fell down on the ground, and the congregant picked him up, put his kippah back on the head, on the head, and I said, "Apologies, sir, but sorry, I was so rushing." And the Rebbe asked him, "Where are you rushing?" He said, "I'm rushing over there." And he said, "What is there?" And the Chassid said, "There is my parnosa." So Rebbe asked him, "How do you know that your parnosa is over there but not over there?" And this is exactly my question. I hope you understand. There's no place in the Torah, there's no quote in the Torah, not only where Avram Avinu was sent, but in which direction. Avram Avinu is standing probably at that moment in Haran, or in some opinions it was still in Ur. And how did he know to go west? Why didn't he go east? How he chose the direction? Yes, he wasn't point where to go, where to stop, but the direction also wasn't point. Okay, you can tell me that the earth is round, and yes, our sages knew about this much prior for Giordano Bruno and Christopher Columbus, but at the end of the day, probably Avram Avinu would be end up this way or another. Hashem would figure the way how to end up in the future land of Israel, but the truth is that he wasn't told the direction. So there are few explanations to this. One of the simplest one, probably Hashem told them the direction where to go west, but didn't tell them what is the destination, not mentioned in the Torah. The other explanation, maybe those words were told in Ur, or maybe in Haran, or even those words were told to Avram to go on his way without a direction, was told from Haran, and it was more or less in the same direction that from Ur he just continued the journey. But I want to offer much more romantic explanation to this. This is a moment that the Jewish nation is born. It's still not a nation, it's still not a family, it's still just one person. Even Sarah wasn't addressed by those words Lech Lecha before she caught up with Avram later on. This is the first time that Hashem addresses a Jewish person and tells him to go. And maybe this is a moment that, it's so to say, the Jewish compass was born and enrooted in our DNA. Maybe this is a moment when Avram Avinu understand what is direction. And it's not just a romantic or esoteric saying, no. Since then, it's a law. All our prayers are addressed towards Jerusalem. We are praying, doesn't matter where you are, but in what generation, either you are in Honolulu or Moscow or Shanghai, you're still praying towards Jerusalem. Doesn't matter if it's the east, south, north, or west. Towards Jerusalem. And the Jewish prayers, the text of the Jewish prayers, it's always towards Jerusalem. The poems that was written for the last thousand years, it's always towards Jerusalem. Or dreams about the Jewish country and Jewish state, they're always towards Jerusalem. But more interesting, and the moment that we forget the direction, when we lose our Jewish compass in our DNA, then when all the problems starts. When Andalusia became called in a new holy land and now new promised land, and people turn their back to Jerusalem. When Berlin start to be called the New Jerusalem, and Jewish people turn back towards Jerusalem. This is a moment, the beginning of a disaster for Jewish people, when we are reminded what direction we should go, when the direction we should grow physically, geographically, morally, spiritually. Maybe this is a reason why this year, this cycle will begin with Parshas Lech Lecha. Maybe this is a time to restart, to reboot, to check, to calibrate our Jewish compass towards Jerusalem. Thank you very much. Good luck. I see you next week.